All right, this is Ubaid on behalf of V Electronics, and in this video, we're going to be looking at a concept called ethical consumerism. Okay, let me write this down over here. So this will be ethical consumerism. Now, when it comes to consumers, ethical consumerism has to do with concepts like sustainability. So, how sustainable is this product? Okay, how much more can they produce without destroying some of the raw materials that they use to produce this product. Okay, how many more units can a company or business produce without getting rid or completely eliminating all the raw materials that they use to make this product? Okay, it could also deal with things like child labor, for example. Okay, is this coming from a place where they use child labor? Okay. Ethical consumerism may have to do with things like environment as well. Is this company or business polluting the environment while producing this product? Okay, may have to do with locally sourced materials. Okay, is this company getting materials from within a 150-mile radius, for example, to reduce the footprint on the planet? Okay, so on and so forth. So this is all relevant to ethical consumerism. So you have concepts like sustainability, okay, environmentally friendly, okay, locally sourced, for example, okay, et cetera, et cetera. So this is ethics as far as ethical consumerism is concerned. Now, just because it's locally sourced doesn't necessarily means it's ethical. Okay, however, this is something a lot of consumers prefer. Okay, because obviously there's a lot to it. Okay, just because it's environmentally friendly, okay, doesn't necessarily mean that it's ethical consumerism. I mean, somebody who runs a business and does not pollute the environment may still use child labor, for example. Okay, so even though these concepts are relevant to ethical consumerism, um, they're not necessarily the fact. Okay, so they're not necessarily um, ethical consumerism. All right, so when it comes to ethical consumerism, you also have to consider what's called marginal benefit. Okay, so marginal benefit, we know how the theory of marginal benefit works. Okay, as consumers consume, they tend to consume the product that gives them the most benefit at the lowest cost possible. Okay, so marginal benefit. So products that are less expensive, okay, give them the most benefit at the lowest cost possible. Okay, so in this case, okay, when it comes to marginal benefit may contradict with ethical consumerism, right? Because obviously consumers who are buying at the lowest cost do not necessarily look at the ethics of the situation, do not look at the ethics of the business. However, some consumers may go ahead and consider ethical consumerism when making that purchase decision. And we talked about consumer purchase decision process in the past video, and this has to do with that consumer decision process, okay, purchase decision making process. Okay, so when it comes to ethical consumerism, there is another term that you have to keep in mind that's product differentiation. So the other term that you have to keep in mind is product differentiation. So what exactly is product differentiation? So when it comes to product differentiation, okay, this is a marketing strategy where a brand identifies the one thing that makes it different from the competitors. Now, this could be ethical consumerism, and a lot of companies do go ahead and brand themselves as um, okay, a company that follows all the ethics, okay, or a company that's involved in ethical consumerism. Okay, so this is product differentiation, this is marketing strategy. So ethical consumerism is a buzzword because it allows companies to differentiate their products. It makes them unique. It makes their product unique, as a result of which they're able to sell for a lot more than some of the other products in the market because consumers are willing to pay the price when it comes to ethical consumerism. Okay, some consumers are willing to pay the price when it comes to ethical consumerism. Okay, if the business is sustainable, if the product is manufactured sustainably, okay, it's possible that the consumers may go ahead and pay a higher price for that product, okay, which is handcrafted, for example, compared to a product which is mass produced. So this is marketing strategy where a company or business is trying to make its product unique. All right. So this all works out when it comes to branding and messaging. Okay, this is something that they use, okay, to make sure that they get as many buyers and as much of a market share as possible. All right, so that would be it for this video. On behalf of Electronics, this is Obey. Have yourself a great day.